We're finally back on track. Hey everyone, welcome to Prince of the Gay. I'm your host Connie, and today we're here with my blind reaction to episode 21 of Big City Greens, and we are finally back to where we left off before we took our break. Because these episodes have a different release order compared to production order, which is stupid and should never be the case. This episode comes after episode, what was it, 17, 18? I have a hair or something on my nose. And so it's like that episode had left off on a pretty notable cliffhanger. And we've just had these other episodes in between that are kind of like not really irrelevant, but well, the Halloween one might be irrelevant. But they felt out of place considering, because they didn't continue the story. They didn't continue like with the big plot moment that was revealed. And that was, of course, Cricket and Tilly's mom coming into the picture, having been apparently released from prison. And it was a big episode. It was a big reveal. It was a huge moment. And unfortunately, we just haven't been able to see like the follow-up until now. So I'm glad to finally be getting to this, because it has been on my mind since I brought the show back and everything, since we started reacting to this again. I'll be completely honest here. It's kind of something that it's like I knew when it was coming, but I've still been like so focused on waiting for that the episodes prior to this, the couple episodes we reacted to since coming back, have been like not like bad or anything, but I've just been like not as focused on as I would have liked to be. And that's just an inherent problem with the way that this was handled. And I've talked about before, it's like this is not like the first time that a network has done things this way, has like fucked up like the release order compared to the production order. And honestly, it might not be the last. It's one of those cases where networks will change the order of episodes airing to like line up with certain times and whatnot, and to like, I guess, fit things better. But unfortunately, it can screw up like plot points and like stories going on, and even continuity to some degree. Now, if it's just like a bunch of episodic things where it's like, oh, it doesn't really feed into the other that much, not that big of a deal. But it could, at points, have some consistency issues and weird things. Luckily, it seems like that it hasn't really been much of a thing here. It's not like any of the episodes in between these two have had, like, the mom just being part of the cast or something. Thankfully, it didn't do that. But yeah, I definitely feel like the episodes were released at the time they were, and switched around so that the holidays talked about in them, Halloween and Thanksgiving, could be featured around that time period of release. That they would be released around that time rather than like offset because of another episode interfering with that, which is dumb. But a network will do that to try and like appeal to viewers. Oh, we have to have the Halloween special right around Halloween. Can't have it be a week later. It's dumb. It's dumb. And it breaks immersion too, which is the worst part. But a lot of the kids who are watching won't really like, they won't really think about it too much. And the kids are the main demographic, and a lot of these studios act like kids are the only ones who watch because of that. It's like, oh, these are shows marketed mostly towards kids and on a network made for kids, And so these studios, these network executives automatically assume, oh, we don't have to worry about any adults who might watch this. They're the minority. When a lot of the time that's not necessarily the case. But they're the minority. We don't have to worry about them. People aren't going to like find that much interest in that after a certain age, and it's like that's just not true. Cartoons are so widely appreciated and watched by adults that it's like it's kind of stupid to say otherwise. Like back in the day, cartoons were more of like, oh, the only time adults would watch them is when they're watching with their kids. And back in the day, cartoons were made to be a lot simpler and didn't have like these big narrative focuses. They didn't go into depth with a lot of things. They didn't like have a lot of meaningful commentary. But nowadays, most cartoons do. You have stuff like Adventure Time. You have Big City Greens, even to a point. You have even My Little Pony had amazing adult commentary in it. You have Owl House and Amphibia. You have all these shows that, yeah, can appeal to kids still because they, in a way, have to. But they also actively appeal to adults. They actively have things that kids are not going to understand that really appeal to adults. Because creators nowadays realize that if you're making a cartoon only appeal to one demographic, you're failing. If you make any show that only appeals to a singular demographic, you're failing. You want to appeal to as many demographics as possible. And so most of these, like, these showrunners, these creators nowadays, they want to appeal to both boys and girls. None of these shows are, like, gendered. They want to appeal to younger kids, older kids, teenagers, adults, anyone who could watch it. They want to appeal to all races and backgrounds. They want to appeal to pretty much everyone that they can. And that's why you see a lot more diversity nowadays in a lot of these shows. That's why you see queer representation. Why you see body positivity. Why you see just as many important female characters as male characters. These shows are trying to appeal to wider demographics. And that's a good thing. That's important because it shows that these shows matter. But these network executives only see it as like they're cartoons. They're made for kids, which is, again, just a stupid take, especially nowadays. And so when they switch around episodes like this, they're thinking, oh, the kids won't care. And yeah, a lot of the kids won't care. There are some kids who will definitely notice. Kids can be smarter than you realize and much more observant than you realize. But while some kids will notice, most of them won't care. They're watching for the funny, colorful characters doing funny, weird, silly things. So it's one of those cases where you just have to realize that network interference and executive meddling is the villain here. Which is funny because, like, you have those kinds of people kind of act as almost the villains in this series. Like, I know Chip isn't like a network executive. He's the owner of a grocery store chain, right? But it's kind of a similar thing. He has this executive position and he's like explicitly a bad guy. So it's like, and honestly, we're just seeing a lot more characters like that who are bad guys in media nowadays, to be fair. Though also, to be fair, we also had the guy who was like the store owner from the last episode, the Thanksgiving Black Friday episode, who was not a bad guy. He was just sick of having to work on Thanksgiving, and in the end, they even like extended an olive branch to him, and it was actually kind of sweet. It was actually a genuinely sweet, nice moment. So it's like we also get to see like good people on that side too in this series. This series does do that pretty well. Either way, I know I'm kind of going on a little bit of a rant here. But it all just kind of comes around to the fact that this episode is like, what, 3, 4 episodes after the previous one where this story starts. And it's just one of those occasions where it's like, we really, really, really shouldn't have done this. Well, the networks shouldn't have done this. It really does break the immersion of the episodes together. And like I said, though, I'm going to continue reacting to these episodes in the release order because it's just easier. Because to watch them in like in the order intended, the production order, I would have to find out the episode names ahead of time, and I don't want to do that because I consider that a spoiler, and I try to be as spoiler free as possible. I would have to find out the episode names and like the exact order it's supposed to be in, and that would just be confusing and difficult, and I don't want to do it. So we're just watching in release order, and so yeah, we're finally back to this story. Hopefully most of this season we don't have much problem with this, and then the future seasons don't have a problem with it. But for now, let's get into this and see how this story continues. Hold up just a sec. Before you click that link down in the description below to get to today's video, I want to remind you of all the awesome content we have both on this channel and the Princess of Gaming channel. Let's check it out. And we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So I looked up the actress, Wendy McClendon Covey, and the only thing I would know her from, there's things I've heard of but not really seen. The only thing I would know her from is she was in the Disney movie Elemental. She was Gail Cumulus. So it's like that's the only thing I know the VA from. But this was a very interesting episode that touched on some very interesting topics. Obviously, like, I paused the reaction at a couple points to discuss them. And it's one of those kind of episodes that definitely is trying to almost like teach the audience, especially the younger audience, about some things, but like expressing it in a way to where it's like the adults would understand it more. Because from the kid's perspective, from a child watching this, all they would think is the mom is a criminal. Basically, the kids would have Grandma Alice's viewpoint. She's a criminal, she's dangerous, she's a bad influence on her kids. That's pretty much all like a kid watching this episode would think. But as an adult, you have an entirely different perspective, because there's a lot more nuance to this. And obviously a big point of this episode is that she's trying to be better in order to be a better influence for her kids, but she also wants her kids to be better. She doesn't want her kids to end up like her and end up spending years in prison. Because, like, Although, again, I don't think she would have spent that many years in prison for what she did. She, at that point, would probably have a lot of regrets about that, especially because of being, away from her kids for so long. Who it made very clear in the flashback at the beginning, the cold open, that she clearly, loved dearly. And still does, obviously. Um, and so she wants to, like, kind of turn things around. And being, like, a little bit of a public nuisance, as we saw them kind of being, while going around town and, like, causing some mischief. And it's like, that's one thing. But she doesn't want to, like really get into the heavy stuff, and definitely doesn't want her kids to get into that anymore. And it's very clear that her opinion on this kind of stuff hasn't changed. Like the scene with the zoo and everything, and her opinion on that really makes that clear. But it also shows that she's not just going to, like, take crazy actions when it would risk, having her locked up for years again, and taking her away from her kids for all that time again. She's choosing to put her kids first and put her relationship with her kids first, which is not bad. Like I said in the reaction and everything, I do kind of side with her with what she did with, like, trying to free the cows and everything. But the way she went about it wasn't smart for a number of reasons. Um, I agree, like I said in the reaction, that corporate farming and all of that is kind of fucked. The way it, like, mistreats and mishandles animals is not okay. Um, and it's just, again, for lack of a better word, inhumane. It's unethical how they do a lot of that. And it's really interesting too, because, like, we live in a country where foie gras is banned because of the way it's made. For those who don't know, foie gras is, I want to say it's liver of a duck, and it's cultivated within the duck while it's still alive by basically inhumanely force feeding and just unethically manipulating the growth of the duck and everything in ways that just are not okay. And so it's actually banned here in America because of that. Foie gras is illegal. And yet we still have all this corporate farming where all these animals are, you know, treated so poorly and so terribly. And it's just like, that seems kind of ironic, because they do the same thing with cows. They manipulate and overfeed them to make them bigger so they can, have more meat from them and stuff. They manipulate their diets for milk production, having cows produce milk outside of the times they normally would. They manipulate chickens into laying eggs, like, at unreasonable rates, and so on and so forth. And it's just like, that's not okay. We're gonna, like, we're gonna protect the ducks and draw the line at ducks, but we're not going to, like, do the same for all these other animals. Like, really? And it's like, there are farms out there that are more ethical. There are farms that, raise animals in very ethical, very, good natured ways. Have, like, them being in open fields and everything, have a lot of room to, like, walk around and graze and just be treated a lot better and stuff. And those are the kinds of farms we like to support. There's a farm that also doubled as, like, this ice cream dairy farm back at back in a town I used to live in when I was younger. We used to go there all the time because their ice cream was really good, and they had their animals out and about, and they weren't, like, locked in a barn or anything, in these little pens. No, they had this entire like fenced off, but still this entire field to graze in and hang out in, and they would come to the fence and like interact with people and stuff. You could see the chickens roaming about, and it was like really cool. It was a really nice place. I don't know if it's still like up and running, but it was really cool, and I liked going there. Um, but yeah, it's like there are very good ways to do farming to get these products for food and whatnot for people. You can do it in an ethical way. There are some people who will try to argue that there's no ethical way to farm animals for their like meat and milk and eggs and stuff like that, but that's going a little far. I'm not gonna go. I'm not gonna be one of those people who like takes that a little too far. Um, but I feel like you kind of see the difference with how the Greens treat their animals as almost like extensions of their family, and how we see the corporate farm in the cold open of this episode. How the cows are like forced into these tiny pens that they barely have room to stand in and everything. It shows a very notable difference. And you can understand why Nancy would be against that. And so, yeah, it's really interesting to kind of paint the picture that she was basically just acting as an animal rights activist, and again, going a little far with it. Actually, like breaking into the farm to free those cows was not the smartest decision for a number of reasons. Because what were you gonna do with all those cows? Where were you gonna put them? Were you just gonna let them like run free somewhere? It kind of comes to a head when Nancy chooses not to free the animals at the zoo. It shows that she's learned from that, and it shows that she understands that freeing the animals in that case, letting them loose in big city, would be a very bad idea. It would actively be dangerous for the people of big city and for the animals themselves. And so it shows that she's grown and she understands that you can still fight and lobby and argue against that kind of stuff, but do it in the right way to where the animals won't suffer because of it. It's the same reason why you can't just let certain animals like free into the wild in like locations and areas that they couldn't naturally thrive in. It's it's you can't just like, for example, you can't just take a fish and let it free in the ocean. You have to know a lot about the fish, about where its natural habitat would be, etc., etc. You can't just like go to the ocean and let like a goldfish free in the ocean. It's not going to survive like that. It's not a good idea. I don't know why that's the specific example I came up with, by the way, but it's 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 just one of those occasions where you have to think more about it. There are other ways you can lobby and fight against unjust and inhumane animal treatment, and it's perfectly like ethically correct to do stuff like that. So yeah, it's a complicated kind of situation that has a lot of nuance to it, and I like that this show is showcasing that. Nancy is definitely kind of the fun mom, while we've seen already throughout the series that Bill is more of a responsible dad. He's the kind of parent who's just like trying to be as responsible as possible, and he tries to be fun. He's not great at it. He kind of fails and ends up being a little cringy at times, but he tries, and he's not like unfun. He's not like bad or mean or anything, but he's definitely a more serious parent than Nancy. While Nancy does tend to be a lot more fun loving and wild and whatnot, but she has shown like those bits of responsibility to her as well. to where it's like she still wants to keep her kids safe. She wants to make sure they're making the right decisions, etc., etc. So we get to see both sides of her in this episode, and I do like that. It makes her feel like a character, like a person, rather than a caricature. It makes her feel more real. Um, I did also mention in the reaction that she is kind of hot. Like I said, it's just kind of the combination of things that are all like little attributes that I tend to really like in women. And I have a couple types, I would say. But it's like, you know, the tank top look with the leather jacket sometimes, having tattoos, the freckles, the curly hair. It's like these are all traits that I can really get into, that I can really like find myself attracted to. Her kind of wild personality, her desire for, animal rights and stuff even. It's like this is all stuff that I can absolutely get behind. And I'm not afraid. I've never been afraid to say if a cartoon character is hot. I think it's kind of a dumb idea to like be against that. It's like if a character is drawn to be attractive, it's like they're drawn to be attractive. And there's some little hints in this episode that Nancy is supposed to be canonically seen as attractive. There's characters who like blush at her and whatnot, and it's made very clear she is like in canon, very like physically attractive. And there's nothing wrong with that, like I said. Fiction allows you to view that kind of thing in that way. And like there's some people who weirdly say like, oh, but it's a cartoon, you're attracted to a cartoon, you know it's not real, right? It's like, no shit, Sherlock, of course I know it's not real. It doesn't mean the design can't be visually appealing. It's like, what? That logic just doesn't logic. And it's like, I know it's a cartoon, I know it's fake, but it's like I'm not saying that I think I would like I could like date her or anything in real life. No. I'm not like getting reality and fiction confused for each other here. I'm just saying this character is drawn attractively. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's such a weird take to find that weird. Honestly. But I have seen people like have that take. I have seen a lot of people who say like, "Oh, cartoon characters aren't attractive. It's weird to be attracted to cartoon characters." No, it's not. It's just absolutely not. But anyway, I'm not gonna like rant about that forever. Um, I like that this got a full episode treatment instead of just being segmented. It definitely deserved and needed it. Um, the little subplot with Bill being super anxious about this and Grandma Alice, being kind of a nuisance, was the weakest part of this episode. Because it's like, it just felt very generic, Bill's anxiety over this entire thing in the first place felt like very needlessly over dramatic, melodramatic even. And it just felt like it wasn't. I don't know. I just don't feel like I really believed it. I mean, it might sound weird, but it's like, with the way he reacted to her at the end of the episode that actually precedes this, with even like the way like she was acting and telling them the story and everything, it's like I don't really feel like he had a reason to actively distrust her that much. And you could say, oh, but Grandma Alice's disdain for her was clearly causing the problems, and like that's where a lot of his distrust, a lot of his anxiety was coming from. Is coming from Grandma Alice constantly nagging in his ear about it. And to a degree, probably. But I also feel like that anxiety was just always there, and it just got exacerbated by it. And it just feels like I just don't feel like he had a reason to like distrust her as much as he did. And not just because we have different information that him as a character isn't privy to. It just feels like it just felt weird. Um, I kind of wish that they went more into the divorce aspect of it, and maybe they will in the future, because I feel like that could have been very interesting to touch on. And if they wanted to do the entire thing about Bill having anxiety over her, being with them, I feel like it would have worked better if it like explained more about the exact reason they got divorced and just that entire kind of story. I feel like it would have allowed Bill's distrust and anxiety to feel a lot more earned if we know that there actually was some bad blood between them. Because, again, the way the last episode ended and the way this was like built into, no evidence that there was any actual bad blood there. We have no reason to believe that there was anything between them. That, like, outside of getting divorced and just their relationship not working out, we have no reason to believe that there's actually a reason for him to have that much anxiety. Especially with her only crime, the one that sent her to jail, being that she was just trying to help out some cows. Again, she went about it the wrong way, but it just feels really off to like act like she's some kind of like horrible criminal for that. That'd be like looking at someone shoplifting and saying like, "Oh, they're the scum of the earth." It's like, what? Calm down. They stole a pack of gum. It's like, chill the fuck out. It's just, it's over the top. And I understand this is a cartoon and one that does tend to get over the top sometimes, but it does just feel a little bit exaggerated in an unnatural way. The zoo animals being freed and having to be put back is a plot point that's been done in many different cartoons and things. It's not new. And it wasn't really handled in any like special way here. Luckily the episode was more like centered around the relationship between Nancy and the kids especially, so it was not really about that, but still. It did feel like they could have done a little more interesting things with it. But again, I do like that the idea that they were trying to do it to connect with her and she just didn't need them to do so. She was trying to lead them in the right direction and not be like her, not make the same mistakes she did. But yeah, it's just one of those occasions where I feel like they could have done it a little more interesting. That's all. I really feel like this episode was good, but nothing spectacular. I like a lot of the aspects they went into, but I feel like I wish they went into them a little more, like the divorce thing once again. And I like Nancy as a character, but I definitely feel like I need to see more of her in order to like really see how she's going to evolve as a character, especially with her relationship with everyone as the series progresses. I assume she's probably not going to be in like every episode or anything, but especially since she's not living with the Greens. But I do hope that she's recurring enough to where we see her often. Like Remy. Like Remy's not in every episode, he's not in every segment, but we see him enough to where he's a recurring major character. Or Gloria. Gloria is another great example of that. Um, I want her to be like on that level of consistency because we definitely need to see more of her. And especially because she's their mother, like we definitely should not be cutting them out, cutting her out of too much of the series going forward. She should absolutely remain a consistent, important character. But we'll see. We'll see. Um, yeah, again, I like this episode. Didn't love it. It wasn't like great, but it was still good. It was still enjoyable. Like a very respectable like 7 out of 10, I would say. Got a few things that I feel like it could have worked on a little better. A couple things that were a little annoying. But nothing like that really hurts it either. So yeah, tell me in the comments below what you thought of this episode of Big City Greens. And thank you so much for tuning in. As always, no spoilers. And for now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.